I am a commercial film director and I own an ad agency. So I make lots of commercials and do things that adults don't generally do. I travel a lot for work, particularly in Asia and Europe. I just moved in across the street from the Staples Center, or what it's called now, the crypto, that crypto thing. I wasn't working out. I was sitting on a stationary bike trying to decide if I wanted to watch Seinfeld or King of Queens. And before I could make the decision, which was really big, I felt like what can only be described as a large kitchen knife stabbing me repeatedly in the chest. So I grabbed my stuff and I decided whether I should go home and take a nap, sleep it off, or if I should be a grown-up about it and go to the hospital.
I remember getting a call from the ER about a relatively young patient in his mid-30s who had an aortic dissection. And an aortic dissection is when the walls of the aorta tear, and it's a pretty severe, immediately life-threatening issue. Many patients don't make it to the hospital.
This was 2 days before my birthday. At the time I was 36, turning 37. I texted my cousin because that night we were meant to go to medieval times. I texted her saying that I might be late because, you know, who knows how long this is gonna take, a couple hours.
This disease has about a 1% per hour mortality. So most people will be dead within 100 hours.
Dr. Roberts said, your aorta tore and it damaged your aortic valve, so we have to replace that. But more importantly, you have an aneurysm, which is ready to burst.
And he's like, all right, here we go, let's do it.
I would have probably just died because there aren't any symptoms for an aneurysm.
There are a number of hospitals around that do not provide services for severe aortic issues like this, like aortic dissection. And in that case, if you land in one of their emergency rooms and you kind of have to wait to be transferred, it's a big surgery. It's one of the more complex things that we do. And he did very well. I mean, afterward, he looked great, very stable, wasn't bleeding.
They put in a mechanical valve, so I tick. They cut out the section that was bad of my aorta that was twice the size, replaced it with a garden hose. I'm not sure what technically they did, but 2 weeks later, they had to go back in, cut a pericardial window, and then drain it.
Very, very common for young patients like him to bleed, and he had to go back to the operating room to have that drained.
Again, my life's been saved because this could have ended poorly. Oh, so many hugs today.
And surgery went very, very well. And he was a very good patient.
Elena was great. She's kind of a taskmaster.
Ryan maybe never used to hear that somebody tells him what to do. And, probably my very direct approach, I will say, no, you're not going to stay in bed.
So she would make me get up and walk around. She's super caring and really wants to make sure that I do my part.
Ryan is a person who makes us love our job and to have a great appreciation for our job.
That's round one. When I came back 7 years later, I had a stomach ache that I thought was just because we were eating too much. I couldn't sleep. I knew something was kind of off, and I walked to California Hospital. And again, it was purely out of instinct. There were a battery of other tests that they wanted to do to make sure that my aorta hadn't ruptured again.
He came for abdominal pain, and he had a CAT scan, which he was diagnosed with perforated appendicitis. Perforated appendix, if it's not appropriately being surgery done, as well as antibiotics, it can be life-threatening.
He's like, if it's not done right, you could die. And I'm like, just put me out, man. Just take it out. It turned out my appendix was gangrenous. For someone like me, getting an infection is even worse because the infection could travel into the valve, and then once your valve gets infected, that's a really big deal. So they had to open me up and make sure that they got everything out of there.
I had discussed the imaging with the radiologist, and it looked a little suspicious for us.
Dr. Drake tells me that they had found a node on my thyroid.
And I recommended that he would have a biopsy. It came back as a thyroid cancer.
For all intents and purposes, it should have been nothing. Like that was what, it's one of these things. It's, it's just a node. Like a lot of people have nodes on their thyroid. Most of the time it's nothing. And I mean, obviously when you hear you have cancer, it's kind of it's like one of the big scary things to hear.
I initially was shocked because he was young and honestly has gone through a lot, but he also was very appreciative that we were able to catch it early on.
The good thing about catching it so early is that it hadn't spread anywhere. So really removing it was the best thing. I sounded like Tom Waits. I talk like this. January 5th of 2022 is when I went in and had my thyroid removed. 5 days later, I still went to London to shoot a commercial. They did all the right things to make sure that I didn't have another rupture. They didn't have to check to see if that node was cancerous, but they did. I probably wouldn't have found that out for another 5-6 years before anything would have showed up. It's kind of an amazing thing that they were able to save me the first time, and then the second time, and then the third time, and then the fourth time. I'm super grateful, and I mean, I owe them my life, clearly.